I'm got late. This is chapter 3. All Saints Day, Final Goodbyes. Thursday, November 1st, 2007. Before I left town, Meredith said, "Go, I'll be waiting for you here." Those were her last words she said to me, by Giacomo Silenzi on the Sunday Mirror. There were always junkies and drug dealers around, especially in the garden in our car park. We would come out and find syringes everywhere. I never felt safe. Valentina, a former tenant to the Telegraph. All Saints' Day was November 1st, followed by All Souls' Day, November 2nd, known to Christmas as the Day of the Dead. Known to Christians as the Day of the Dead. The two religious holidays ushered in a solemn time for Italians who, as they had since pagan times, gathered in cemeteries and in their homes to honor saints and mourn the dead. Many also attended Mass and shared multi-course meals topped off with finger-shaped ossi della morte, bones of the dead. Tasty almond cookies crafted in local bakeries. Two things were predictable about November 1st, 2007, as anybody familiar with the local culture would know. First, rent fell due on the 1st of the month for everyone in town, Rudy and Raphael, as well as Amanda and Meredith. Since Progia landlords didn't accept checks, Amanda and Meredith were cash rich, each withdrawn €300, about 450 USD, from bank machines to pay their rent. The second predictable thing, most Italian students would be out of town. All Souls' Day is an official holiday, so it's a day off from school, and many, not all, businesses are closed, explained Zach Nowak. When a holiday falls on a Thursday, as it did in 2007, the Friday after is called Ponte, or bridge, because it forms a bridge between the day off and Saturday. That long weekend was an opportunity for Italian students to go back to their home regions. Ergo, anyone watching that house for the wrong reasons would be certain that the four boys downstairs would not be there. In fact, all 6 Italian tenants had already departed by November 1st, taking advantage of the long holiday weekend to visit families or wedge in a getaway. Giacomo, Stefano, and Marco had all gone home to Porto San Giero in the Marche, a lovely mountainous region on the Adriatic coast, about 200 miles south. Riccardo was in Bologna, B-O-L-O-G-N-A, Bologna. Laura had gone to Montefasciano, then to Viterbo, Viterbo near Rome. Filomeno, as did every weekend, was staying with her boyfriend Marco Zorloi in his Perugia flat, only about a 10-minute drive from the cottage, and she popped in only occasionally. Likewise, since October 25th, Amanda bunked at Raphael's. That meant that only Meredith would be spending Thursday night in the cottage. Taking on a managerial role, Filomena had addressed 2 security issues with the landlord. She complained about a faulty lock on the front door, saying it worked fine when the girls had first moved in, but by October the door had begun to open on its own unless locked. The ancient shutters in her room also needed fixing. One was warped, preventing her from locking the set. Worse, the wind blew the shutters open. Since Filomena's window was near the street and just to the left of the front door, any passerby could spot the conveniently open shutters in a burglary-prone neighborhood. Only the week before, at 9:30 p.m., a significant hour it turns out, Stefano's friend Gregorio had seen an intruder standing in the cottage garden, but he couldn't pick out a face because it was too dark. A few days later, Meredith told Giacomo that she had been frightened when she saw a shadow in the garden. On both occasions, the boys had searched the grounds and found nothing. The muscular Giacomo boasted that he'd never felt afraid in the cottage. No, he was not the worrying type. At midday on October 29th, he came upstairs to say goodbye to Meredith, accompanied by the soft-spoken, much smaller Stefano. Giacomo handed his keys over to Meredith and asked her for a favor. One of his cats had a cut ear. Could she look after it while he was gone? She had said yes. He kissed her and waved goodbye. Then he and Stefano caught a train for the Marche. Meredith must have had mixed feelings. Certainly the popular Giacomo had never pretended to be a Romeo or Casanova, really. He hung out at the Red Zone, an exciting disco with a rowdy reputation, where dealers peddled hashish, cocaine, ketamine, and other drugs in the parking lot. In addition to looking in on his cat, he asked Meredith to water the 7 luxuriant marijuana plants he had grown in the downstairs flat. This request made Meredith so nervous that she sought out one of her friend Amy's advice on what to do, but in the end she agreed to do the watering. Giacomo never called Meredith from his parents' home. She texted him once just to say hello. He texted back, but not to say how much he missed her. Instead, he made a simple request. Hey, can you take my sheets off the line? In her diary, Amanda pointed a rosy picture of her life in the cottage with 4 girls of 3 different nationalities living together as harmoniously as the March sisters in Little Women. They didn't keep a party house, she proudly told her Seattle friends. The girls were clean, neat, and quiet. They crammed their refrigerator with fruit juice, mineral water, cheeses, and yogurt. Each girl had her own shelf. Meredith stocked mainly fresh vegetables, mushrooms, carrots, and onions. Amanda stored mozzarella cheese, tomato, mushrooms, and lettuce, French cheese, and lots of pesto. She kept it simple, mainly vegetarian diet, partially through choice and partially because she suffered stomach problems and that often resulted in painful spasms. Despite their busy lives, the 4 girls had time to hang out together in the kitchen, a cheerful room with modern appliances, wooden cabinets, purple flower window seats, and a rectangular wood table with a green top. The girls liked to watch TV together at night. They would sometimes roll a joint and pass it around, but in Perugia this was apparently no more remarkable than serving espresso. Now this peaceful life was about to come to an abrupt halt. The following reconstruction of events comes from a witness report, court testimonies, diaries in particular, a long email that American student Amandaknox sent to everyone on her online address book on November 4, 2007. On November 1st, All Saints' Day, Amanda returned home with Raphael while Raphael was still sleeping. She had the American habit of daily showers and the American impatience with faulty European bathroom fixtures. She hated her boyfriend's shower stall, which was cramped and leaky. So as usual, she headed for the cottage, where she kept her shampoo, beauty supplies, and clean clothes. She arrived around 10:30 a.m. Meredith's door was still closed. Amanda assumed that she was sleeping. After showering, the American student changed her clothes that she had hung out on a drying rack. Then she went into the kitchen and started getting the pans out for lunch. Filomena dropped by with her boyfriend Marco around 12:30 p.m. I went to Villa de Porogola with my boyfriend to change clothes because we were going to lunch at Lucia Alteri's house, a friend of Marco's, she said later. Philomena asked Amanda to help her wrap presents for Luca's birthday, not wanting to ask Marco because evidently he was all thumbs. Luca was dating her best friend, Paola Grande, and the couple had plans to spend the evening together at an amusement park. Amanda helped her wrap a package, after which Philomena rushed off with her boyfriend. A bit later, Meredith came out of her room, and in the email, Amanda said, "The last time I saw Meredith, beautiful funny, was when I came home. After I had taken a shower and was fumbling around in the kitchen, she emerged from her room with the blood of her costume, a vampire, still dripping down her chin. We talked for a while in the kitchen how the night went, what our plans were for the day. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then she went to take a shower and I began to start eating." In a later document, Amanda would elaborate, adding that Meredith mentioned that she couldn't wash off the vampire makeup. She said the British girl also described a pink fruit juice drink that her friends had concocted for Halloween, in which they had inserted with great creativity and a wraith-like hand made out of ice. According to Amanda, she then told Meredith that she wanted to confide in her, saying that she had an upsetting talk with Javi, her co-worker at La Chic, about her relationship with Raphael. Javi didn't approve of Raphael because Amanda had previously told him how wonderful DJ was. Amanda also felt like she was cheating on DJ even though they'd split up. She said Meredith advised her to do what was right in her heart and not to worry about Javi. It's the nicest way to be like, fuck off, bro. Those aren't real problems, Amanda. This was an encore presentation. On October 30th, the four flatmates had gathered around the kitchen at lunchtime for the very last time. Amanda told them how she was depressed because she felt conflicted about her relationship with Raphael. According to Philomena, Amanda said that she liked Raphael and he was nice, but she felt like a little guilty about her American boyfriend DJ. Among other things, who at the time was in China or Japan, I do not remember. Was this cheating? Amanda had wondered out loud. Laura and Philomena shrugged, not feeling the need to weigh in on the love lives of unmarried 20-year-olds. The latter did not manage a tactful remark about the difficulty of long-distance relationships and the many miles between Amanda and DJ. Meredith, on the other hand, said she'd never cheat under any conditions. She had never cheated in her life. She hated cheating. Although Laura took this as a slam on Amanda, DJ later said that she never cheated on him. She never betrayed my trust. First off, we weren't together. She could make her own choices. Even so, she first started becoming interested in Raphael. She had told me about him. She asked me if it was okay to date him. She didn't want to hurt me. I told her, we're not together. Do what makes you happy. That'll make me happy. In any case, Meredith was most likely talking about her own boyfriend. The week before, she told Jade Bidwell, another British friend, that she suspected Guacamo of unfaithfulness. We sat drinking at the same table and chatting in general about relationships and relationships with boys, and Meredith said her boyfriend wasn't very reliable in the sense that he seemed not to be the type who would be faithful. Jade later told the police she happened to call during an evening in which he said he would be home, but she had the feeling that he was not home. From the manner in which she spoke of this boy, I don't think she considered him as a boyfriend, but as a person she knew, but not as a serious attachment. On October 30th, Meredith stressed to her flatmates that fidelity was important in a relationship, but she couldn't have been terribly upset with anyone at the table. Soon Raffaele showed up and made pasta for the girls. Laura did not participate, having already eaten, but the British student joined the others at what Philomena called a very nice lunch. That would be the last time Laura ever saw Meredith. On November 1st, Meredith and Amanda wrapped up their talk, and Meredith headed for the shower to wash off vampire makeup. Around 2 p.m., Raphael showed up and made pasta once again. As they were eating together, Meredith came out of the shower and grabbed some laundry to put some laundry on, and one or the other. To grab some laundry or to put some laundry on, one or the other, Amanda wrote in an email. Around the same time, Meredith called her mother, Arlene. Hi, ma'am. Hi, Meredith's mom. Telling her that she was going to watch a film with friends that afternoon and then came home early to finish an essay. They also discussed Meredith's upcoming trip to London. The British girl usually called her parents at night because money was tight and the rates were slightly cheaper then. But on November 1st, she dialed her father at 2:15 p.m. just to touch base. He was a bank counter in the Croydon when his phone rang. He was at a bank counter in Croydon when his phone rang. Meredith explained that she didn't have classes that day because of the holiday. They chatted for a few minutes. She said that she was about to go out. He told her that he loved her and would call her later that night. That was the last time John ever spoke to his daughter. In her email, amandaknox said that she was playing guitar with Raphael when Meredith emerged from her room around 4 p.m., but that the British girl said bye and left for the day without mentioning where she was going. Meredith wore a white t-shirt tucked under a white knit top, a bright blue Adidas jacket, and Puma athletic shoes. Raphael later mentioned that he thought that it was cute that Meredith was also wearing frayed jeans that had belonged to her ex-boyfriend back in London. Ooh. Raphael's hitting on Meredith in front of Amanda. The couple hung out around the cottage while Amanda strummed the guitar, and they shared a spinello, a popular pastime on both floors of the cottage. Then they went back to Raphael's flat. They never saw Meredith again. The lovers would tell the police. Later, they would tell confusing accounts about how they spent the rest of the evening. They never claimed to have amnesia, a popular accusation. Instead, they agreed upon what they did for the most part, but couldn't remember exactly what time they did what. The confusion they blamed on the marijuana and the fact that Amanda didn't wear a watch. They either did or did not clean Amanda's ears or take a long shower together. They either did or did not have sex. Both remembered Raffaele made fish dinner rather late and that afterward they had problems with a broken pipe under the sink. Amanda was sure that she'd read a Harry Potter book in German. They remembered watching a film Amelie in German. They remembered watching the film Amelie on Raffaele's computer. The popular French movie had a childish flair that seemed ideal for this particular couple. In the email, Amanda said they went to his place to watch a movie, eat dinner, and spend the evening indoors. We didn't go out, she stressed. For certain, they were at Raffaele's place around 5:45 p.m. because Giovanna Popovic, a Serbian medical student, rang the doorbell and saw both of them. She told Raffaele that she needed to retrieve a suitcase that her mother was sending by bus that evening, and could he drive her to the station at midnight. When questioned later by the police, Giovanna said Raffaele acted, maybe a bit differently than usual, but only in contrast to his normal, warm and fun-loving nature. He readily agreed to meet her at Garibaldi Street and when she needed him at 8 8:18 p.m., Patrick Lumumba, Amanda's boss at Le Chic, texted her to say that it was slow at work just like a Sunday and that she didn't need to come in. As Meredith had complained, Amanda used Italian in every opportunity. With Patrick, she had no choice because his English was practically non-existent. At 8:35 p.m., she texted a simple message in schoolgirl Italian. It said, "Okay, see you later, good evening," as Amanda translated it. "I didn't really want to go to work that night. I preferred to stay home with Raffaele," she said later. "I was very pleased. In fact, I actually jumped on Raphael and went, 'Woo! I don't have to go to work.'" Shortly afterwards, Amanda turned off her cell phone, both to save the battery, she said, and to avoid getting another call from Patrick asking her to come in after all. Raffaele turned off his phone sometime later, perhaps to get some privacy. "My father bombarded me with telephone calls, even 4 per day," Raphael later said. "He wanted me to study to prepare my thesis, but I had written only a draft." At 8:42 p.m., Raffaele received a 3-minute 41-second phone call from his father. Around 8:45, Giovanna Popovic again rang Raffaele's doorbell to let him know that his services wouldn't be needed after all. Her mother, it turned out, had called to say that the suitcase had never made it to the station. Amanda answered the buzzer and invited the girl in, but Giovanna said no thanks, as she needed to get home. Later, she told the police the American girl had not acted strangely and that she was as cheerful and outgoing, and that she was always cheerful and outgoing. At 9:10 p.m., records show that Amelie ended on Raffaele's computer. Freed from any social obligations, the lovers simply lazed around for the rest of the evening, doing this and that in no particular order, they would later tell the police. Meredith had been in one place all this time, Robin Butterworth and Amy Frost's flat, the same place where she had dined on Halloween. Sophie Purton was also there, as were a few of the British friends. They were all squeezed together on a bed watching The Notebook, an American film about a couple who fall madly in love, break up, and find each other again after many years. Everyone was still tired from Halloween, they said later, but Meredith was perfectly calm and quiet. They didn't gossip about Amanda that night, but instead talked about boys they knew back home. The girls kept pausing the movie to look at photographs taken on Halloween. Meredith had captioned her Facebook shots, "Halloween Progia style! Ow!" When they got hungry around 6 p.m., they stopped the movie to eat a pizza they baked, followed by coffee-flavored gelato and an apple crumble. Nobody drank anything alcoholic. Meredith wasn't very hungry, Sophie remembered, and ate only part of her pizza. A little before 9 p.m., Meredith said that she was tired and wanted an early evening. That surprised no one, given their jam-packed Halloween. She never mentioned anything about a date that night. That would have surprised them. "She would have told us," Amy said. Before Meredith left that night, she borrowed a history book from Robin. They had an exam coming up, and both girls mistakenly thought that they had class the next day, not knowing that the university would be closed on All Souls' Day. Meredith promised to return the book to Robin before the 10 a.m. class. Then Sophie and Meredith left the flat together, zipped up their jackets against the chill. They headed downtown on Via Bontempi, talking about how they needed to catch some sleep. Soon they turned into Via del Riscado and kept going until they got to Via del Lupo, Street of the Wolf, where they parted at 8:55 p.m. Sophie was sure of the time because she had a TV show she had wanted to watch, and she got home in time to see it. If Meredith took her usual path, then she continued on City Via Roscato, past a Chinese restaurant, and then took the stairs down Via del Pergola, past the dicey basketball court, and then crossed the street in front of the parking garage. Near 9 p.m., Meredith must have reached the cottage, her final destination, around that time. She tried to place a call to her mother, but it was cut off. At 10 p.m., somebody tried to use Meredith's British cell phone to reach her London bank, but couldn't get through. Apparently because the caller had neglected to punch in the London area code. At 10:13 p.m., her bank sent an automated message on that same phone, but nobody answered. Both calls appeared to originate somewhere on the Via del Pergola, according to the police. At 10:30 p.m., an Italian couple returning from a romantic dinner in the center came down the stairs on the Via del Pergola to get into their car. A colored man running in the opposite direction nearly ran into them. At about the same time, a car driven by Pasqualina Coletta, a tourist visiting Perugia, broke down right outside the parking garage. He waited for a tow truck from around 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. He saw nothing strange, nor did he hear any screams. Elderly Nara Capozzelli, who lived in an apartment across the street from the cottage, had gone to bed around 9 or 9:30 p.m., but slept fitfully. She got up about 2 hours later. She thought to use the bathroom. She heard a long, prolonged scream. At one point, I heard the cry of a woman, she later said. It was not a normal cry. My hair stood on end. Her apartment was had double glazed windows and faced away from the cottage, but she did have a bathroom window that looked out in that direction. She looked through it and didn't see anything unusual. Then she thought she heard two people running in opposite directions away from that area, or as she put it, the sound of dry leaves and gravel along the path of the house of the crime, almost simultaneously the steps of someone hurrying along the metal steps of the car park. Nara didn't look at her watch, nor did she call the police. Shortly after midnight, Meredith's father, John, called his daughter, as promised. She did not pick up the phone. Around 1 a.m., a young Tunisian man named Hickman Kari, aka Shaky, who knew the British girls from the clubs, accompanied a friend to the parking garage on St. Angelo, right across the street from the cottage. They stopped to chat before they said goodbye. They looked over at the cottage. Everything seemed calm and peaceful. At 2:30 a.m., Rudy Gaudet was spotted at Doma's Disco, dancing with his Spanish friends. Chapter 4, All Souls Day. Where is Meredith Kercher? Friday, November 2nd, 2007. She was at home, locked up inside. How could she have been protected herself any better? It is horrible. Perugia resident to the Associated Press. On All Souls Day, the sun shone in the slanted trees around the cottage. The front door with the bad lock stood wide open. Someone had thrown a rock through Philomena's window, the one with the shutters that wouldn't stay shut. At first glance, everything inside the apartment looked pristine. The dishes had been put away and were spick and span in a kitchen. The hallway looked swept, but somebody had left odd traces in each bathroom. Nothing stirred in Meredith's room, crammed with notebooks, calendars, Italian dictionaries, pretty dresses, purses, schoolbooks, family photos, jewelry, writing paper, all the necessities of student life. Behind her bedroom door, locked now from the outside, the second act of Meredith's mystery was about to unfold. The first person to step into the alternate reality was a complete stranger. 26-year-old Alessandro Bassanari around 8:30 a.m. on a clear autumn day. The boyish Perugia resident was having breakfast with his mother, Elisabetta Lana, and his sister Filomena in their Polish Villa Independente, a beautiful private house set to an enormous, well-maintained garden. About a half a mile uphill from the cottage, it appeared on the map on Via Speranito, Speranito, but was actually Via Andrea de Perugia, near an early Christian church built on a former pagan temple. Towering trees and... I'm stressed out. I don't know how to pronounce stuff. I'm embarrassed. Towering trees and thick bushes concealed the property from the road. In fact, many Perugina didn't know there was a house behind all of that shrubbery. Elisabetta was recovering from a disturbing night. She had received a menacing phone call around 10 p.m. A male voice had warned, "There is a bomb in your toilet. Do not piss, do not flush, and get out of the house because it may explode." I'm not even going to try to say that in Italian. I'll repeat it though. "There is a bomb in your toilet. Do not piss, do not flush, and get out of the house because it may explode." At first, Elisabetta thought that it was the butt of a practical joke. She simply put down the phone, but then she became uneasy. This caller appeared to be a mind reader. She had been on the verge of using the toilet. Worse, even on the enviable street, she had no reason to worry. "My family had suffered in the past," Elisabetta said later. "A burglary in 2003, one in 2004 of particular importance, and an attempted robbery in December 2006. She almost felt rattled because she had been receiving crank calls in the middle of the night. When she answered the phone, the caller either hung up or breathed into the phone. Elisabetta didn't share this typical Italian reluctance about calling. Elisabetta didn't share the typical Italian reluctance about calling the police. She dialed 113, a simple act that would drastically alter the lives of several strangers. There were many different kinds of police officers in Italy, as well as units within units, each with specialized skills. A foreigner could go crazy trying to figure out whom to dial, but Elisabetta chose the Polizia Postale, the postal police, the division that handled telephones and other communication devices. The cops took her call right away and promised to send over a squad car. Next, Elisabetta dialed her son's cell phone and asked him to hurry over. She reached him at 10:30 p.m. at a friend's house. Alessandro jumped into his car and rushed over to the villa. When he reached the house, the postal police had already pulled into the drive. Under his mother's watchful eye, they made a sweep of the house and the garden, albeit in the dark, and found no bombs. Elisabetta calmed down. The officers told her again to call if she received more threats. Now, phone call from Alessandro's girlfriend interrupted his breakfast. Feeling the need for un po' di privacy, a little privacy, Alessandro went outside. He strolled around the half-acre garden, enjoying the crisp morning air and talking on the phone. Around 9 a.m., an object caught his eye. He stopped to look. He saw a light-colored Motorola flipped over, its keyboard resting on the ground. It was in the middle of the lawn, less than 60 feet away from the wooded Villa Andre di Perugia, which wound uphill from the cottage. Alessandro scooped up the phone, went into the house, and showed it to his mother, who thought one of the officers must have lost it during the previous night's search. Again, she called the postal police. They asked her to bring the phone into their office. So Elisabetta dropped it into a plastic bag and took the phone to the station. She signed a statement at 11:30 a.m., left matters in the hands of the police, and headed for a nearby market to pick up groceries. Neither she nor anyone in her family ever heard that phone ring. At 11:50 a.m., the postal police called Elisabetta from the station. "Do you know a Filomena?" they asked, because the police had removed a Vodafone SIM card from the phone and traced it back to its buyer, Filomena, on the Via della Pergola. Filomena, it turned out later, had loaned an extra phone of hers to Meredith to make local calls. No, Elisabetta said, neither she nor her family members knew of anyone called Filomena. Elisabetta then wondered if it might have belonged to their maid. When the latter was questioned, she also drew a blank. Around 12 p.m. at the villa, Alessandro went into the kitchen and made himself a panino. Filomena and the maid decided to search the garden for signs of an intruder from the night before. Suddenly, the two women heard a ringing noise coming from somewhere off in the shrubbery. Filomena followed the sound and started poking around in the bushes with a spade. Incredibly, she found another cell phone under the dead leaves and brambles less than 20 feet from the Via Andre di Perugia. Filomena stared at the tiny phone, a gray and black Sony Ericsson, which was determined to be British. By the time she reached it, it had stopped ringing. She brought it into the house and asked Alessandro to take a look. It rang again. He checked the display. "Amanda," it said. Why didn't Meredith answer her phone? That was the question her friends and family would be asking all day. For Robin Butterworth, the worrying had begun around 10 a.m. because Meredith hadn't shown up for their class. Even though it had turned out to be canceled, Robin still waited around for her friend to appear. She didn't want to nag her about the book, but it was new and expensive, and she needed it back so she could study for the exam. I didn't worry too much at first because, to be honest, Meredith was always late, she said. We texted each other, never called, but after a while I started getting nervous. I called, and then I called again. I kept calling. Meredith never picked up. Meanwhile, Amanda and Raphael were on holiday mode, as they said later. They planned to ditch their school books that day and drive to Gubbio, a beautiful medieval mountain town. But first, Amanda wanted to take her customary shower at the cottage, while Raphael wanted to catch up on his sleep. Amanda said she put on her gray striped sweater and jeans from the night before and set off for the cottage, carrying an empty sack to pick up her dirty laundry and planning to grab a mop from home because Raphael's floor was still damp from the busted pipe under his sink. Since Raphael's floor was still damp from the busted pipe under the sink, since Raphael had a maid service, he'd never purchased a mop. When Amanda reached the cottage around 10:30 a.m., she said she saw the open door, but wasn't surprised because of the bad luck, she said later to her mom. I didn't go from seeing an open door to thinking, oh, there must have been a murder, Amanda described that first look in the cottage in the long email. The door was wide open. Strange, yes, but not so strange that I really thought anything about it. I assumed someone in the house was doing exactly what I said, taking out the trash or talking really quickly to the neighbors downstairs. So I closed the door behind me, but I didn't lock it and assumed that the person who left the door would like to come back in. When I entered, I called out if anyone was there, but no one responded, and I assumed that if anyone was there, they were still asleep. Laura's door was open, which meant that she wasn't home, and Philomena's door was also closed. Meredith's door was closed, but the American girl assumed that she was sleeping in just as she had the previous day. Then Amanda went into the bathroom to take a quick shower. It was after I stepped out of the shower and onto the mat that I noticed the blood stream in the bathroom. It was on the mat that I was using to dry my feet, and there was drops in the sink. At first, I thought the blood might have come from my ears, which I had pierced extensively not too long ago, but then immediately I knew it wasn't mine because the stains on the mat were too big for just droplets from my ear, and then I touched the blood in the sink and it was caked on already. There was also blood smeared on the faucet again. However, I thought it was strange because my roommates and I were very clean and we don't leave blood. You should know, I get into character by watching Amanda Knox interviews. I'm Amanda Knox. You ready to talk to me? She told herself that perhaps Meredith was having menstrual issues and hadn't cleaned up. Ew! Since there was no towels in the bathroom, another oddity, Amanda said that she had went into her bathroom to get more, using the blue bath mat like a coaster so she didn't have to step on the cold floors. The room had a dresser, small closet, nightstand, and desk in which she kept her Toshiba laptop. Everything was nearly arranged in Spartan as if she didn't spend much time there. Amanda said that she had turned on her computer and played some music. After she changed into a blue top, a white skirt, and black hiking boots, she went into a large bathroom shared by Philomena and Laura to borrow their hairdryer. She dried her hair and then made some very unsettling discoveries. Not only had the toilet been full of feces, but somebody had left a lot of toilet paper in the bowl. I noticed that shit that was left in the toilet, something that definitely no one in our house would do. I started feeling a little uncomfortable, so I grabbed the mop out of the closet and left the house, closing the locked door, Amanda said later in an email. Ironically, Meredith had complained of Amanda's own inadequate toilet flushing habits. Amanda Knox later explained that she didn't know about the loo brush that English people use to clean the toilet after flushing. Used to powerful American plumbing, she hadn't realized that the less forceful European toilets often need more attention, perhaps even the use of the brush, to do away with all the remnants in the bowl. Amanda hurried back to Raffaele's flat, taking the mop with her. She quickly mopped his small floor. Over breakfast, she described to him the strange blood in the bathroom, the door wide open, and the shit in the toilet. She's so funny. How odd. As Raphael later told the police, she told me that when she got home, she found the door wide open and bloodstains in the small bathroom. She asked me whether I thought it was strange. I said I did and advised her to phone her friends. When Marco Brusco, one of Raffaele's lawyers, was asked later if the Solicito family blamed Amanda for anything, he mentioned this particular moment. Well, perhaps this one thing might have been done differently, said the bearded lawyer. Southern Italian knows for his outgoing manners and constant smile. He paused, somber, trying to be tactful, choosing his words with care. If only Amanda could have called the police herself and not gone to Raffaele. he continued in the wistful voice. That's all, just the one little thing, you see. She barely knew him. Asked what would have gone differently, he explained about the plans for Raffaelle's graduation party. They thought they'd found a restaurant, don't you see? He must have been in Milan in a few weeks. He would have been in Milan in a few weeks. He never would have been a part of this. On November 1st, while at Raffaelle's, Amanda made a flurry of calls as her phone records confirm. At 12:07 p.m., she called Meredith's British phone but got no reply. Perhaps she was ringing that Philomena. That was the ring Philomena Biscarini heard, leading her like a homing device to the second cell phone in the garden. At 12:08 p.m., Amanda called Philomena, the only Italian roommate still in town. Philomena had spent a happy evening with friends at the amusement park, riding the roller coasters and playing games, and then they had returned to Marco's flat around 10 p.m. Later, other friends had called wanting them to go out, but they said that they were too tired to leave the flat again. Philomena was frazzled. She had gotten up later than she had planned and had borrowed Marco's car to pick up her best friend, Paola Grande. They were heading off to the Fiera di Morte, the Fair of the Dead, at the Panini di Messiano. Nice. America. Oh, I'm so sorry. On Prussia's outskirts, a huge, chaotic affair offering everything from barbecued pigs, turned on spits, to carnival rides, flower stalls, and a flea market. Philomena picked up Paola later than she'd planned, discovered that she'd run out of cigarettes, and stopped to get them. Then, when they finally reached the fairgrounds, her cell phone rang. While we were trying to park the car, I received a phone call from Amanda, who told me that she had slept at Raffaelle's house, and that she had returned to our house and she had found the door open with blood in her bathroom. Philomena said later that she had taken a shower and that she was scared and that she was going to call Raffaelle. It seemed really strange to me. I asked her to check that the house was in order and to call the police. Amanda's scared, guys. So scared. Paola, who overheard this conversation, said Philomena had not told Amanda to call the police. A sensible hesitation, since Amanda was a foreigner, 9 years younger, with limited Italian. At no time did the American girl try to call the police. Nor would she have had the need to call Raffaelle, since she had made all the calls from his flat. The difference in the two accounts may simply be the results of nerves, distress, and a serious language barrier. Amanda's phone records show no calls either to the police or Raffaelle that day. She said, I'm going to walk over a mop and then I'll tell him about it after breakfast. According to Amanda, Philomena told her that she'd gone to a party the night before and had not yet been back to the cottage. Philomena didn't know where Meredith was, but for certain that Laura was in Rome. That meant Meredith was most likely had spent the night alone in the flat and that she was still unaccounted for. Philomena and Paola entered the fairgrounds and started walking around the stalls. Paola and her friends said her friend was agitated and kept her cell phone clenched in her hand. Finally, Philomena called Amanda, who said in the email, Philomena seemed really worried, so I called her and I'd call Meredith and then call her back. I called both Meredith's phones, the English one and then the last, and the Italian one between. The English one first and last, and the Italian one between. The first time I called, the English phone rang and then sounded as if there was a disturbance, but no one answered. I then called the Italian phone, and it just kept ringing, no answer. I called her phone again, and this time an English voice told me that her phone was out of service. Phone records showed this sequence. 12:07, Amanda calls Meredith's phone, no answer. 12:08, Amanda calls Philomena. 12:11, Amanda calls Meredith's Italian phone, no answer. 12:11, Amanda calls Meredith's British phone, no answer. 12:12, Philomena calls Amanda. 12:20, Philomena calls Amanda. 12:34, Philomena calls Amanda. At some point after that last call, Amanda and Raffaele hurried back to the cottage. What were you doing in that time, Amanda? Amanda carried her handbook plus the map, dropping the ladder on the concrete landing in front of her flat. Then she unlocked the door and led Raphael around the house. He said that they went first into the larger bathroom where she showed him the feces. When they went into Philomena's room, which was a wreck, somebody had rummaged through the cupboards and thrown clothes on the floor. Most alarming, a large rock had been thrown through the window and fallen under the desk, half hidden in a sissy shopping bag. In Amanda's email, she said, the living room/kitchen was fine, looked perfectly normal. I was checking for signs of our things missing should there have been a burglar in our house the night before. Philomena's room was closed, but when I opened the door, her room was a mess, and her window was open and completely broken, but her computer was still sitting on the desk like it always was, and this confused me. Convinced that we had been robbed, I went to Laura's room and looked quietly in, but it was spotless, like it hadn't even been touched. This too, I thought odd. I went into the part of the house that Meredith and I share, and I checked my room for things missing, which there weren't. Then I knocked on Meredith's door. At first, I thought she was asleep, so I knocked gently, but then she didn't respond, so I knocked louder, and then and louder and louder until I was really banging on her door, shouting her name. No response. Panicking, I ran out onto the terrace to see if maybe I could see over the ledge into her room, but I couldn't see in. Bad angle. She thinks she's a spy. Raphael wrote this in his diary. Dear fucking diary. All right, Raphael. I'm ready for the last. Let's get it. There was glass on the floor, and then the room was a mess. Amanda's door was open, but the room was tidy. Then I went into Amanda's door and I saw it was locked. First I checked to see if what Amanda had told me about the blood in the bathroom was true. I noticed there were drops of blood in the sink and there was something strange on the bath mat, a mixture of blood and water, while the rest of the bathroom was clean. Nothing else was out of place. Just then Amanda went into the big bathroom and came out looking scared. She clung to me and said that when she was showering earlier, there had been stools in the lavatory bowl, and now it was clean. I wondered what was going on and went out to see if I could climb up to Meredith's window. I tried to force the door, but I couldn't open it. Be one thing, but he's so unathletic. At 12:30 p.m., Philomena made a final call to Amanda. We spoke to each other for the third time, Philomena recalled, though it was the fourth call, and she told me that the window in my room was broken and that my room was in a mess. Philomena also misremembered the call as having taken place at 12:45. At 12:47, Amanda placed the first of 5 calls to her mother, Edna, back in Seattle, where it was 4:47 a.m. She said, "Mom, I'm okay. I'm at home and I think somebody might have been in my house." She told Edna about the open door and the blood in the bathroom and the unflushed toilet. She said she couldn't find her roommate Meredith. Edna told her to hang up the phone and call the police. Since Amanda was a foreigner with poor language skills, Raffaele said that he would handle the call. First, he called his sister, Vanessa, for advice. She worked in Rome for the Carabinieri, a paramilitary unit that handles violent crime. Oh, I'm gonna call my sister. I'm gonna call my big sister. At the end, I think the thing to do was break down Meredith's door, Raphael wrote in his diary. We try, but we cannot. Then we call my sister, and she tells me to call 112, similar to 911. I call them and leave the name of Amanda and the details and try to explain briefly the situation. They say they would call back. We pause and wait outside. At 12:51, Carabinieri Captain Donnell Capitelli received a call from a polite Italian boy whose accents indicated that he was from the South, alerting officers to a possible burglary. Capitelli was busy juggling calls that day and told the young man to call back later. At 12:54 p.m., Raffaelli redialed 112. This call would become a hit on YouTube. The Italian student's voice sounds calm and self-confident. Amanda can be heard clearly in the background, supplying address details. Hello, good morning. Listen, someone broke into the house through a window and made a big mess. There is a closed door. Hi, police. Somebody broke in and made a big mess. Police. They managed to enter that way? They broke a window? Or how do you know that's how they entered? Raffaelli. You can see the signs. There are also stains of blood in the bathroom. They didn't take anything. The problem is the door is locked. There's a lot of blood. Police. There is a locked door? Which door is locked? Raffaelli. The one belonging to the roommate who isn't here and we don't know where she is. Yes, we tried to call her, but she does not respond to anyone. Police. Okay, good. Now we will send a patrol to verify the situation. From that point on, all was conflict and contradiction, a battle of words. Raffaelli and Amanda were on one side, prosecution, witness, and police on the other side. All sides agreed that the couple was outside at this point on the lawn. Disagreement had Michelle Bastelli, Fabio Marzi, two officers from the postal police, hot on the trail of Filomena's cell phone, arrived after Raphael had called the Carabinieri, or had Raffaelli called the Carabinieri after the postal police had already arrived to establish some kind of alibi. The postal police insisted that they had arrived first in a dark, unmarked sedan and they had parked outside. They said they saw two of college kids standing around on a sunny patch near the fence. They were whispering to each other and they told me that they were waiting for the Carabinieri. One officer said they didn't say when they had called them, just that they were waiting for them. Neither officer saw Raffaelli make a call. Later, they would insist that they had actually arrived around 12:35 p.m., shaving 10 minutes off the previous claim, which only added to the confusion. This point would be debated until the end, and the two accounts would differ only by 5 minutes. They told me that they had come back to the house and had found the front door open and a window of one of the flatmates, Filomena, had been smashed. Raffaelli invited the officers to come inside, where he and Amanda had showed them the broken window and the ransacked room with clothes on the floor. Since Amanda lived in the house, she had been given the task of escorting these officers around the cottage. She communicated with them in broken Italian. After the first police arrived, I brought them into the house because I thought that they were the people that Raphael had called, she wrote in her email. The officers dressed in Borghese, plain clothes, not in uniform, which could explain why Raffaele apparently didn't inform Amanda that they weren't the Carbonari. And so I showed them the door was locked and the window was broken. Bastielli was a telecommunications investigator, unused to burglary or murder scenes, but he made a few quick deductions. I immediately thought that this had been an attempt to make something look like a break-in, he insisted. He recalled seeing the glass on top of the clothes, although the crime scene would not show that. From the glass, he said, he deducted that the intruder had ransacked the room first and then broken the window from the inside. He also noticed a small, easy-to-sell valuables were still in place, such as a computer in Philomena's room and a camera in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Philomena still hadn't arrived, even though she was only a 15-minute drive away from the cottage. But she had called her boyfriend Marco and asked him to rush to the cottage. Since Philomena was in his car, he had to call his friend Luca, Paola's boyfriend, to ask for a ride. Frank Savarzo would later comment on the weirdness of this call. Here was Luca, a complete stranger to Meredith, Amanda, and Raffaele. Suddenly, his good friend Marco called asking for a lift, saying Philomena's house had been broken into. Luca doesn't know, but the script of his scene is already written, Frank wrote in Perugia Shock. He's not going just to drive a friend to check a thief. He is going on a trip to hell. The two Italian men, both medium-sized, with brown hair and glasses, arrived at the cottage shortly before 1 p.m. Not long afterwards, Philomena arrived with Paola, a stranger to Raffaele and Amanda. Paola said that the couple was in Amanda's room when she arrived and that they came out to introduce themselves. In the American girl's email, she captured all of this activity in a rush. 2 ununiformed police officers came to our house. I showed them what I could and told them what I knew. I gave them phone numbers and explained a bit in broken English. And then Philomena arrived with her boyfriend Marco and 2 other friends of hers. Altogether, we checked the house and talked to police. Philomena, wearing a loose top and jeans tucked into high leather boots, hurried into her own room. It was a mess. The broken window was scary, not to mention the clothes thrown on the floor, but her money was still there. Plus her designer sunglasses, the golden jewelry she kept in the drawer on the nightstand, her laptop computer. She rummaged around looking for her things, destroying part of the crime scene. Stupid burglars, she told her boyfriend with a nervous laugh. It seemed an unusual theft, but we joked that it was not a professional theft, she later explained. But we could not find Mez, and there was blood in the bathroom. I was worried. The Carbonari still hadn't arrived, but the 2 postal police officers faced the 6 young people. By now, the officers had learned about both cell phones. They knew that the first phone found, the one traced to Philomena, had been loaned to Meredith so that she could make local calls. The police also knew Meredith, the owner of the second cell phone, was missing, but they did not suspect that she had been murdered. Nobody did at this point. The officers were reluctant to break down Meredith's door without good reason. Philomena took charge. She said it was very strange that her flatmate Meredith would be without her cell phones and that she carried them everywhere. In fact, Philomena couldn't picture Meredith without the British cell phone tucked into her back pocket in case her mother, who was ill, needed to reach her. Still, the officers hesitated. They were postal police, not Carbonari. They were not supposed to go around kicking down doors. Before they destroyed property, they needed to know, did Meredith usually lock her door or not? The 2 roommates, Amanda and Philomena, couldn't agree. Actually, they couldn't even understand each other. Philomena spoke to the police in rapid Italian. Amanda struggled to explain in her bad Italian that sometimes Meredith locked the door. Amanda and Meredith always kept their door locked, but Philomena said the exact opposite. Luca told the police, without addressing the language difficulties later, Laura Mazzetti, the other Italian roommate, would confirm that, yes, Meredith would lock her door when she went to see her parents in London or was away on some other trip. It's almost like she didn't trust one or some of her roommates. Just want to lock my door just in case. After the locked door discussion, Philomena stayed with the police while Amanda went into the kitchen to call her mother. Meanwhile, Raffaele stayed with the other Italians who were standing in front of the door. Luca asked him why it was already cracked. Raffaele said that he had tried to break it down, remembered Paola. He asked the police to open the door, but they said they couldn't, so we decided to do it. Finally, with Philomena's blessing at around 1:15 p.m., Luca gave the door 3 or 4 hard kicks. It flew open, knocked right off the hinges. The room was dark. Everyone except Raffaele and Amanda got a quick look. Where you guys at? Why aren't you looking? Why aren't you looking for Meredith? Everyone except Raffaele and Amanda got a quick look, seeing a terrifying image. There's blood everywhere. Meredith's beige duvet on the floor, with a bluish foot protruding from the edge of it. A foot, yelled Luca to Philomena. A foot, Marco shouted. Sangue, blood. All I remember was Philomena saying, a foot, Raffaella would later say. I was in shock. I couldn't understand what was going on. All I heard was a foot. I thought there was a foot in her room. Paola screamed. She took off down the hallway and ran out of the house. Amanda heard the shouts from the kitchen. Even her mother could hear the commotion over the phone from Seattle. She said, a foot, Edna recalled. So I thought that there was a foot in the room. Maybe an animal foot. I don't know what to think. Amanda hung up abruptly. A few minutes later, she called back, panic in her voice. They found a body in Meredith's room, Edna remembered her daughter saying. I gotta go. The police want to talk to me. Amanda headed for Meredith's room, but Raffaele grabbed her and pulled her out of the house. Inspector Battistelli had heard the screaming, the cries of sangue, and ordered everyone out of the house. Only Luca lingered for a moment. He saw Battistelli, he would later say, go into the bathroom, kneel by Meredith, and lift the duvet to see if she was alive. Battistelli would swear that he did not enter the room, but only observed the scene from the doorway, that he could see the blood and the lack of movement under the duvet, so he immediately got on the phone to headquarters. Meanwhile, outside, Amanda was sitting on the ground. And I was in shock and did not understand what happened. Chapter 5. Bad night at the Questera. I'm sorry. Questera. Oh, I got it. I can do this. Friday, November 2nd, 2007. One of the English girls, she tells me she wants to kick Amanda. She actually says that. Same girl, same. Did Amanda understand what her behavior would look like to other people? Well, no, she was traumatized, devastated. Philomena could not forget the blood. Oh. There was so much blood. It was everywhere. She told a reporter for the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera in the only interview she ever gave. But what country is this? Why must a 20-year-old girl be killed this way? And why does she find herself dead now, without anything, without a future? Philomena had set off that morning to spend a pleasant day with her friends at the Fair of the Dead, only to be literally thrown into a murder scene. Her boyfriend had tried to shield her. When the door came down, he had yelled, "Via, Via, go," after he saw blood, and then he had yanked her out of there. But Philomena couldn't forget the nightmare vision. A beige duvet, a ghostly human foot, and a sea of blood. Who would want to kill the dazzling meredithkercher, only 2 months in her Erasmus year? When, why, and how was the murder pulled off? Philomena could think of no enemies that Meredith had, no suspects. Neither could Amanda. They were all strangers just settling in, as the American girl put it. Now Philomena stood around on the cottage's gravel drive under some trees, trying to explain all of this to a bearded officer, while he jotted down the details in a small book. Her boyfriend, Marco, hovered nearby. So did Luca, keeping his arm on Paola, who looked dazed. Paola could not remember how much time had passed between her scream and the moment that she had finally seen Luca outdoors. There was just blackness. But Paola did remember the blood on the wall. That had told her something. "I could see the girl had struggled," she said. "I knew that." Meanwhile, Amanda and Raphael huddled near Luca's silver car on the other side of the gravel drive. A detective had already placed a white marker on Philomena's window ledge right behind where they were standing, and he had used the red and white tape to block off the entire cottage as a crime scene. Villetta de Gelli or Oleri, a house of horrors, reporters would call it now. The postal police ordered all 6 young people to stay outdoors, thereby sparing them a terrible sight. Inspector Battistelli dialed 118, the unit that handled medical emergencies. He also called the Squadra Mobile, the flying squad, the investigative unit charged with identifying suspects and collecting evidence. An ambulance showed up around 1:50 p.m., only minutes after Monica Napolani, head of homicide for the flying squad. She was a tanned, rail-thin brunette with big brown eyes. Wearing her trademark dark jacket, tight jeans, and tall leather boots, she looked like a double agent from a spy movie and would play a key role in the Meredith murder investigation over the next 2 years. The 2 paramedics who'd arrived in the ambulance hurried inside, not waiting to put on protective gears. But Napoleoni paused the threshold of the cottage to don gloves and shoe coverings. She followed the paramedics, taking notes and snapping pictures. A little later, Proteus forensic police also showed up. They wore white protective clothing, looking like Martians, but not all of them covered their hair. In Meredith's bedroom, the duvet still shrouded everything except part of her face and 1 foot. When the rescue workers lifted the covering, they saw her half-naked body resting on a bloody pillow. Meredith's left leg was turned out at a peculiar angle. The killer had removed all of her clothes except a white t-shirt soaked in red. It had been pulled down to expose her breasts. It was like a butcher shop, Napoleon later said of the murder scene. She was slaughtered amid pools of blood on the terracotta tile floor. Police found the rest of the victim's clothes, the same ones that her friends had seen her wearing the night before she vanished the previous evening. All of her garments were accounted for: the blue jacket, the boyfriend's jeans, the pale sweater, black underpants, white socks, and red and white Puma athletic shoes. Somebody had hacked off Meredith's blood-stained white bra with a knife and made a point at pulling the duvet up over her throat. When the police officers removed the covering, they didn't have to wonder about the cause of death. The killer had stabbed the victim 3 times in the throat. 2 of the wounds were small, as if the assailant had first used the knife to taunt forced cooperation, but the killing blow caused a huge gaping wound on the left-hand side. Once investigators had time to study the blood splatters on the tiles, they theorized that Meredith had been assaulted in 2 locations. First, someone had attacked her just inside the bedroom door, perhaps catching her by surprise. Then, after a struggle, she had been trapped near the wardrobe, where officers found a large pool of blood. The killer either knocked her down or forced her to her knees and then stabbed her. Forensic experts would never agree on whether she was stabbed from the front or the back, but small round droplets of blood on her bra and her exposed breasts suggested that she had been on her back, nearly supine, when she bled to death. The victim's blood had spurted upward and fallen onto her body and splattered on the tile floor. Bloody fingerprints marred the bottom of the wardrobe where she had struggled for her life, making a vain attempt to pull herself back up. A tiny metal bra clasp, still sewn to a bit of cloth, lay under the pillow on which Meredith's body rested. I'm sorry. Investigators initially missed it, although it showed up in the video they shot that day, November 2nd, but 47 days would pass before they collected this key piece of evidence. By then, investigators had trampled on it, and it had somehow moved more than 4 feet across the room, ending up near a soiled carpet in a jumble of shopping bags and other items that police had sorted through. A Japanese print of faraway snowy peaks still clung to the inside of Meredith's door, but the doorknob was stained with blood. The blue-covered novel Ian McEwan's Enduring Love rested on a wooden nightstand next to Meredith's bed, as did a glass of water and a sack of outgoing mail, waiting for a delivery that would never come. Meredith had addressed the top letter to her father and had filled out 2 postcards to friends. The nightstand top drawer stood slightly open, as if an intruder had made a quick search for valuables. But Meredith's white Mac computer was still on her desk. A big brown faux leather purse still sat neatly on top of the narrow bed, along with several schoolbooks and a spiral notebook. But it had been rummaged through, and Meredith's cash, cell phones, keys, and credit cards were all missing. On the wall, where she had posted photos of smiling friends, someone had wiped a bloody hand, leaving long red stripes on the white paint. The killer had rested the knife on the bed, leaving a bloody outline on the sheet. The bloody handprint stained the pillows under the victim. Forensic police also discovered 2 of the missing towels from the little bathroom under Meredith's bed. It was slightly bloody. Police also found a number of distinct bloody shoe prints in the room, all made by the same Nike shoe, which investigators identified by the concentric circles on the soles. 3 of the shoe prints appeared on the tile floor next to the victim. The Nike wearer also left a trail of bloody shoe prints running down the hallway towards the front door exit, becoming fainter with each step. The only bloody bare footprint found in the flat was the half print left on the blue mat in the small bathroom. Investigators would later claim that the luminol revealed additional bloody bare footprints in the corridor, but Dr. Pierza Steffioni, the DNA analyst from Rome's Forensic Police Service, could not confirm the presence of blood in any of these random prints, since luminol reacts with many household substances, and she did not conduct the second test for blood. All of these bare footprints detected with luminol were tested for DNA, however, none of them showed Meredith's genetic profile. In a few of the police photos, the ankle hid the biggest throat wound. In those pictures, Meredith appeared to be simply resting on her back, her brown eyes open, drowsily looking over the scene. An optimist might achieve a moment of denial, hoping against hope that she could still be saved. But other photos showed the terrible throat wound, the heartbreaking defense wounds, the punctures on her palms and bruised arms, plus blood spatters on her chest, arms, and hands. The close-ups of Meredith with her head turned to the side captured the full ghastliness. Her mouth was swollen and bruised, as if she had been punched in the face. The two small cuts on her throat were visible, as was the fatal stab wound, a blow so savage that police later said that only a man could have delivered it. Still, it's possible to hope that Meredith didn't feel the knife going in. Stabbing survivors often say that they didn't feel the blade. Instead, they turned cold, then nauseated, and then faint. When they finally lost enough blood, they pass out. Now, Meredith's story belonged to the police. The press caught the cars arriving, everything from the dark, unmarked sedans of the postal police to the shiny blue Cabanari vehicles, the tires squeaking on the roadway. Soon, police officers were everywhere, standing around in plain clothes or dark blue jackets, said the Piazza Scientifica, talking on their cell phones and taking notes. Only a few were allowed in Meredith's room. The Cabanari, it turned out, had been delayed because the house was difficult to find, and they had to call Amanda on her cell phone to get directions. Called by Raffaelli slightly before 1 p.m., they didn't arrive until around 1:30 p.m. Then the media rushed in. Perhaps, yes, somebody alerted them, but it's not necessary, the top official said when the press said to the press with a shrug. They follow the police. They know everything they do. They can get there right away. The photographers snapped Napoleoni when she emerged from the house to question 6 young people on the gravel drive. One shot showed her quizzing Filomena, Luca, and Piola over the trees. In another photo, Napoleoni took a hard look at Amanda and Raffaelli. They were standing on the gravel by Luca's car on the left of the front row. Other high-profile officers came early, including Marco Chiacchiera, second in command to the flying squad. He burned through 3 sets of cell phone batteries that day, talking to headquarters. Shortly after 3 p.m., Public Minister PM Giuliano Mangione arrived at the cottage. Giuliano Giuliano would lead the criminal investigation as well as prosecute the case. Known for his controversial group crime scenarios, the burly Parigino was there by chance, simply the prosecutor of call, a name picked out of a local schedule. Mangione shook Coroner Luca Lalli's plastic glove hand on the threshold of the House of Horrors, and then both went inside. The forensic police showed They showed Luca to lift the cover over Meredith long enough to check for rigor mortis, but unfortunately would not allow him to take her temperature, a great aid in determining time of death. Then came Giovanni, the other officers from SCO, Servicio Central Operative, the crack investigative squad from Rome. They would assist with the prosecutor in recreating Meredith's final hours bit by bit. They also built a portrait of Meredith's social act. From the cottage tenants to the English girls, from the bartenders to the customers in Perugia's club, after Giobbi Giovanni came the forensic police from Rome, wearing the protective white clothes, but not always head coverings. The two teams of forensic police, Perugini, oh, I'm so tired. My head hurts so bad. Oh my gosh. Oh. And Roman played their major roles that first day. They cataloged items in the bedroom of the murdered British girl, making choices in retrospect seemed either poignant or odd, like the small tube of Vaseline used by many women for chapped lips, but flagged by police as a sex aid, and then worked into their crime theories. The list of items found in the room included a book titled Early Modern Europe, 1450 to 1789 in English, plastic teeth in which fake blood was embedded, designated police noted to have a cinematic effect, a black cloak marked a wild man with a high collar found under the desk, a small container of Vaseline to fit in a purse, blue and silver on the outside found under the desk. 2 envelopes with Royal Mail letterhead and paper tucked inside, a small purse of faux leather, a beige shoulder bag, apparently blood-stained, containing an iPad, plastic makeup bag, a black pencil, a pen, a lipstick, mascara, and a crumpled white handkerchief. One of the last officers to arrive was Domenico Pavazio, head of the flying squad. His stubbornness showed him around his subordinates. Sorry about that. His subordinates showed him around the property, but the forensic police from Rome were already at work inside the cottage, and he didn't enter. The tubby, non-athletic Provazio quickly concluded that the murder had to have been an inside job. He simply didn't want to believe, as he later said in court, that anybody could have climbed through Philomena's window without injury. That day, officers directed him to the window on the opposite side of the house over the balcony. They were convinced that had they been burglars, they would have had chosen that entry point. Although the garden offered many big rocks to hurl through the glass, Provazio noted that the balcony had a chair, a table, a flower pot, objects he would have used to smash the window had he been a thief. His conclusion: somebody used a key to get in. Amanda recalled this influx of officers in an email she wrote on November 4th. The police told everyone to get out, and not long afterwards the Cabanero arrived, and then Soon afterwards, more police investigators. The police took all of our information and asked us the same question over and over. At the time, I had only what I was wearing and my bag, which thankfully had my passport in it and my wallet. No jacket though, so I was freezing. Raphael, seeing Amanda was cold, gave her his gray parka to wear. He wore jeans and a dark blue sweater with a long yellow scarf wrapped around his neck. I stayed close to her because she was shocked and cold, he said later. He and Amanda paid little attention to the press, who perched on a narrow sidewalk on Villa St. Angelo, a busy street where the college was located, and in a garage parking lot. Film crews even set up their video cameras so that they could get an aerial view capturing Amanda and Raffaele walking around. The photographers watched and waited. For a long time, nothing interesting happened. They snapped the postal police talking to two young couples, Filomena and Marco, Paolo and Luca, over the trees. But nobody drew cameras like the blonde foreign girl and her tall, geeky Italian boyfriend. The two of them held hands, they whispered. They were standing over by the wooden fence that overlooked the ravine. The photographers waited and waited. Then came the split-second opportunity. They took the money shot. The lovers kissed, only for about 30 seconds, but the brief footage later became a YouTube sensation. In the clip, Raffaele faced Amanda. He put his arms around her and pulled her in tight. She lifted her chin, he gave her 3 little pecks, and then he stroked her arms as Amanda turned to look in the direction of the cameras. She looked bleak. I've seen eyes like that in war zones, British journalist was overheard saying loudly several nights later to fellow scribes during drinking beer in La Tana del Orso. Pitiless, uncaring, Amanda, he told everyone. She had the eyes of the killer. Later, the Italian press would call Amanda Luciferina, the girl with the face of an angel and the soul of the devil. Paola and Luca hovered around the officers, trying to figure out exactly how Meredith had died. They were not allowed to listen in on what the police were saying, but Paola edged closer to the front door. When the paramedic came out of the house, she saw him mouth her throat was slit. She and Luca didn't share this information with Amanda and Raffaele right away, but Paola did try to help the American girl. It was very cold, Amanda remembered. First, Raffaele gave me his jacket, but then the others saw that I was cold, really in shock, so they said, Come, and let's get in the car and get warm. And inside the car, we talked more about it. And we kept saying, but what did you see and who was there? Meanwhile, Filomena was on the phone. The moment I understood the gravity of the situation, I first called a lawyer in the offices where I work, she said later, explaining why her first move was to get a legal buffer between her and the police, even in the earliest parts of the investigation. She felt this was necessary, she said, because her family was more than 400 miles away in Calabria, down in the boot of Italy. Amanda, whose family was several continents away, would face the police without legal representation, as would Raffaele. Next, Filomena called Laura, the other flatmate. It was around 1:45 p.m. Thieves have entered the house and killed Meredith, she said bluntly. You are kidding, Laura said. What are you saying? Are you pulling my leg? Filomena repeated the remark. Laura was shocked. She hung up and then called back again. But her roommate couldn't provide any details except that her own room had been ransacked. Yet her jewelry was still there, as was her computer and other expensive things. Laura was still in Viterbo near Rome. I'm so sorry. She called lawyer in the Perugia offices where she and Philomena worked and told him about the murder. She vented a little, cried a little, later she said on the witness stand. Asked why she had called the lawyer first thing, Laura made a bad joke. Sure, I was calling in to report. Yes, attorney, I killed my roommate, she added. That she had certain worries to discuss with him that day, such as how to reschedule a meeting, and certainly I was without a house. After Laura talked to the lawyer that chaotic day, she rounded up her father and various other family members. They headed off to Perugia and the police station. Philomena's third call was to Giacomo Silenzi, the downstairs neighbor who had been dating Meredith. She didn't know his number and had asked Amanda to get it off her cell phone. When Philomena dialed Giacomo, he was on the train headed home to Perugia from his holiday in San Girino. Meredith has been murdered, blurted Philomena. Giacomo turned white, said Stefano, his friend and flatmate who was also on the train. Giacomo didn't say anything right away, but he just sat there stunned. He had never been a talker. Now he simply couldn't find the right words. Meredith was found dead, he finally told Stefano. Then he just sat there on the train while the wheels kept pulling them closer and closer to Perugia. My stomach dropped, he later told Daily Mail. I just couldn't believe it. I had spoken with her for the last time just a couple of days earlier, and she had sent me a text saying she was looking forward to me coming back. He and Stefano got off the train in Faligano, the stop before Perugia. Stefano, feeling the need for an older person to advise them, called a professor, Alessio Artese. They waited around until he joined them at the train station. And then the trio caught the train to Perugia, only about a 20-minute ride there. Giacomo and Stefano called their parents and waited until they arrived. Finally, they all went to the police station. Meanwhile, Philomena was outside the cottage, fretting about with her things. Incredibly, she decided to run back inside, somehow getting past the officers, either with their permission or without their noticing. She grabbed her purse, and then she ran into her bedroom to collect her computer, once again disrupting the crime scene. Later, she would insist that she saw shattered glass atop her clothes, which would bolster the police's fake burglary theory. Michelle Baracelli, the postal police, would also claim that the glass was atop the clothes, although, as stated, no crime scene photo would ever show this. Philomena carried her computer out of the cottage and put it into the back of Marco's car. At the Questera, incredulous police officers take it away from her, asking her what she had been thinking removing objects from a crime scene. It's valid. When she got it back, something strange had happened to the hard drive, and she would be hard-pressed to recover the contents. Somewhat later, police sent all 6 young people to the Questero for questioning. The paparazzi caught a shot of Amanda and Raffaele looking grim and frightened in the back seat of Luca's car. Why did you shower in the house with the open door? Paola asked Amanda during the 15-minute drive. She didn't get an answer. Finally realizing she needed to speak to the American girl through Raffaele, her translator, Paola asked him what time they had arrived at the cottage. Raffaele said Amanda got there at 10:30 a.m. Then she returned to his flat to get him, and then they had come to look around. Then Paola, meaning to be kind, asked if Amanda had somewhere to sleep that night. Raffaele said that she could stay with him and that he'd be leaving Perugia for good on the 16th. Indeed, he had an appointment with the professor on the 14th to discuss his thesis. When Raffaele started asking Luca and Paola questions, was Meredith dead? How did she die? What had they seen? When Raffaele passed the information along to Amanda in his garbled English, he told her Meredith's throat had been cut. Little bit inside, Amanda said later. I cried a bit because I kept thinking of how is it possible? No, it was just too much. Based on the witness report, Frank Savarzo reconstructed this crucial moment on Prosia shock. Raffaele, is she dead? Luca, yes. Amanda cries. Raffaele, did they kill her? Luca, yes, they cut her throat. Raffaele, with a knife? Luca, no, with the bread. Apart from the great Luca joke on this conversation proves that Amanda cried and that she knew Meredith was killed, Frank Savarzo added. Philomena also saw Amanda cry, but none of the reporters ever did, nor would the police. So the press would write that the American girl didn't shed a single tear for Meredith. Luca felt spooked by the whole fucking encounter. I'm sorry. I'll stop going off script. In my defense, I did watch a lot of Amanda Knox interviews, and I'm just grumpy. I'm tired of hanging out with Amanda Knox involuntarily. Luca felt spooked by the whole encounter, even checking his car afterwards to make sure that Amanda and Raphael hadn't left anything incriminating in it. Amanda Knox had always been eccentric, even by Seattle standards. Seattle's the worst! For those of you that do not know. Can confirm. A strong girl who believed in speaking her mind and telling all. Her parents had worried about her studying abroad, saying that she sometimes lacked common sense. That was one of the many reasons they had hoped she'd studied in Germany, where she had close relatives. Everyone agreed that Amanda was book smart, not street smart. She prided herself on being her own person, not like anyone else. But from now on, her freedom would depend on her ability to behave like a conventional person. Amanda's tears, like her smiles and kisses, would be badly timed. An English student has died in Piazza Grimana. The local radio stations began announcing within an hour of the discovery of meredithkercher's body. The early reports said that the student was female and her name wasn't yet known, nor cause of death. In fact, locals assumed it was a drug overdose given the neighborhood. Meredith's friends heard the radio reports. They called people who might know more. They kept the radio on and waited. What else could they do? Robin Butterworth knew Meredith hadn't shown up for class that day, and she was very worried, as she told her roommate Amy Frost. They called Sophie Purton, the last to see Meredith the previous night. She said that she hadn't heard from her either. Then around 3 p.m., Sophie's phone rang. The caller identified herself as an Erasmus program official, speaking in strained tones, choosing her words carefully, as if her heart were in her throat. Are you Sophie Purton? Yes. May we speak? Yes. The caller paused. Do you know a girl named Meredith? Yes. The police are looking for her. May I give them your number? Yes. Sophie called Robin. They knew that the police were looking for a girl named Meredith, but they clung to the hope that their friend wasn't the girl who died. Maybe she wasn't answering her phone for a different reason. They said that the girl was Welsh, Robin said. They said that her age was wrong. They said the girl died near Meredith's house, so we weren't sure. Piasco, the Merlin's co-owner, had heard the radio reports about the dead English girl. He called Sophie to see if she knew more. By this time, the other English friends had evidently started to gather in Robin and Amy's flat to confront one another and come up with a plan. Piasco said that he could hear a lot of crying in the background. So I don't stay on the phone just a bit, the girls say. Not a good time. Maybe later we can talk. Later in the afternoon, the girls decided to head out for the cottage to see if they could learn anything. They hadn't gotten very far when the police called Sophie's cell phone. They told her to take the other girls and to head over to the Satari, to the Stranary, where a police car would pick them up. That was about a 15-minute walk. They arrived at 5:30 p.m. and hung around in front of the Stranarelli, on the same street corner where Amanda Knox and her sister Deanna had spotted Laura putting up the flyer about a room for rent. The cottage was just around the corner. It was too terrible to think about. The British girls faced the newsstands on Piazza Gramana, ordinarily a beehive of activity, but dreary and cold in the November light, with papers blowing across the pavement and cars swirling around. People spoke loudly in order to be heard over the traffic noise. One of the Italian men was even shouting. Robin knew him only as DJ Naff, but his real name had been Pietro Campolagno. He was a bookish-looking Merlin bartender who had worn the Scream mask on Halloween. Robin had once seen him throw ice cubes playfully at Meredith. Amy even told her, "I think he fancies you." Meredith's so pretty. He was talking in Italian to Piasco, Robin said, but I only understood the gist of it. "It is Meredith," Pietro was saying. "Is it her?" He provided some details about how the body was found, but Robin didn't want to hear another word from him. As I was very upset and still no one had said it was Meredithkercher, I told Piasco to tell Pietro to be quiet, so 5:30 p.m. I still didn't know for sure. Finally, around 6 p.m., the police arrived to transport everybody to the Questera, a tall modern building bunched with other gray buildings behind concrete walls, with a little guardhouse in front. Officers escorted the young people into the station, where they were either shown immediately into separate interrogation rooms or dropped into a large waiting room to wait their turn. After being questioned, officers placed them in the same large chamber where they would stay until dawn, with nothing for substance but a vending machine, drinks, and cookies. The room was pale, sterile, Piasco said, like a hospital waiting room. Meredith's friends kept arriving little by little, figuring out the truth. "Hey, miss." "Nobody ever actually told us Meredith died," Robin said. "There was just talk about a girl who had died. We supposed it was Meredith because eventually every single person had arrived. We were all there except Meredith. She was still unaccounted for, and so." According to Amanda, she and Raphael entered the big waiting room around 9 p.m. After they'd finished talking to the police, Robin remembered seeing them later closer to 10 p.m. or 10:30, but then the whole situation was unreal. Everyone felt traumatized. It was hard for people to hear. Amanda did not say much at first. Can you guys imagine Amanda being quiet? She'd given a statement to police at 2:30 p.m. Raffaele had given his at 3:45 p.m. Both were exhausted. The questioning had been more grueling for the American girl because she'd answered first in broken Italian and then, when the translator was provided, had repeated everything so that the police could get it down. Eventually, Laura came down the stairs along with Guacamo and the rest of the boys downstairs. Amanda hugged Guacamo. He and Raphael met for the first time. Eventually, "Ooh, Amanda, got all your hoes in one place. We just need what's his name, the American boy. Amanda hugged Guacamo. He and Raphael met for the first time. Eventually, the witness separated into groups divided by language, English speaking over here, Italians over here. Then, too, the Questera was large with many rooms. Paola Grande, for instance, never saw the lovebirds in the station after dropping them off. In any case, Amanda and Raffaele were thrown among the English girls who were feeling very raw and still in the first phases of discovery and shock. It was a strange time to meet new people when Sophie Purton was introduced to Amanda. She tried to embrace her, but the British girl later complained that Amanda did not reciprocate my hug. She seemed quite cold. She kept her arms to her side. The truth was that without Meredith there to unite them, the loose bonds that connected the young people in the room had already begun to fray. Raffaele didn't even have that much to cling to. He was meeting several of Meredith's friends for the first time. He went around and introduced himself. He said that he was Amanda's boyfriend and that they had been at the cottage when Meredith's body was found. His English wasn't very good, Robin remembered. He was trying to tell them about the door being broken down, and they had to help him find the word for kicked. Still, he was quiet, calm. Amanda, on the other hand, had made a startling impression. Her moods ranged from angry when discussing the crime to playful when interacting with Raffaele. Meredith's friends found Amanda's behavior... We'll just call her America. Amanda's, on the other hand, made a startling impression. Her moods ranged from angry when discussing the crime to playful when interacting with Raffaele. Meredith's friends found Amanda's behavior so outrageous that they nearly dropped their reserve. One of the English girls, she tells me she wants to kick Amanda. Fiasco remembered. He laughed at the absurdity of it. She actually says that. Meanwhile, panicked friends and relatives of Amanda keep calling from Seattle, where it was early afternoon. She was very upset. She kept telling them, saying, "I found the body, I did." The British girls, listening to the calls, finding the agitated American annoying. At the police station, Raffaele was very quiet, nothing strange, but Amanda was always talking on the phone, Sophie said. She was very affectionate to Raffaele, but she would keep complaining, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired." Amy complained that Amanda and Raffaele pushed their chairs together. Amanda propped her feet up on his lap. They made faces at each other, kissing and giggling. At one point, she even stuck her tongue out at Raffaele. "I wonder for the first time if she were mad," Robin said. She literally seemed crazy. Finally, she moved away from the American girl altogether, unable to bear her energy level. She seemed proud of finding the body. She kept talking about it, and she kept saying that there was shit in the toilet. Shit. Since none of the girls had been briefed on how Meredith died, they asked Amanda to provide details. "What do you want to know? Because I know everything," Sophie remembered her saying. Amanda gave her a garbled version based on what she had pieced together from Paola and Luca, and also from the police when they were interrogating her. She told Sophie incorrectly that Meredith had been found in the wardrobe with only her foot sticking out. The only correct detail of that she had, in fact, was that her flatmate's throat had been cut. Natalie Hayward, a tall, thin, shy-looking girl from Peterborough, wondered if Meredith had suffered. "What do you think?" Amanda said. "She fucking bled to death." She also yelled, "Those fucking bastards," Sophie recalled. But I don't think she meant it. I think the murders, she said, she took the shower and then she realized there was some blood. But I don't think she meant it. I think the murderers. She said she took a shower and then she realized there was some blood. At some point, Sophia overheard Amanda Knox talking to her Italian roommates. Threat, threat, threat. She kept repeating loudly. Threat, threat, threat. From November 2nd to the 5th, Amanda Knox would take more than 60 phone calls because people felt closest were far away on different continents. Raffaele, her boyfriend of 6 days, was ever ready to be her translator, but he barely spoke English. Her mother, Edna, was her strongest supporter, but she was still a disembodied voice over the phone. To top it all off, Amanda no longer had a place to live. She can live with her boyfriend of 6 days. She's fine. Amanda's always fine. Frank Savarzo of Prussia Shock, who knew his way around the Questera, described the strange impression of the American girl had made on the interpreter later that night. There was an Australian in the police station, Assistant Fabio da Astalio, who left the wonderful land and come to be a policeman in Perugia. On the afternoon of November 2nd, he called to the Questera. He got there and started to work as an interpreter for Amanda and the English girls until 6 in the next morning. As an interpreter and a waiter, because every now and then he would go to the machine to take some snacks and some beverages for everybody. As an interpreter, as a waiter, and as a psychologist, because the night he assisted Amanda during another terrible moment. At about 3 in the morning, the interrogations of Amanda and everyone else had run without any problems. He tells Amanda that they have to go down to the scientific police to take her fingerprints. As soon as they arrive, Amanda starts nervously walking back and forth, and she starts to bring her hands to her temples and cautiously hit her head. She starts to bring her hands to her temples and cautiously hit her head. Do Astalio is worried. He talks to Amanda. He asks her what's going on. He offers her some water and some coffee. A nice guy, this Da Astalio. It really looks like he was sincerely worried for the self-hurting girl. He couldn't know that she was just one step from the abyss. Okay. Amanda remembered the night quite differently. In her lengthy email, she spoke of fielding many questions after entering the Questera. I was in the room for 6 hours straight after that without seeing anyone else, answering questions in Italian for the first hour, and then they brought in an interpreter. And he helped me out, and the details that I didn't know the words for. They asked me, of course, about the morning, the last time I saw Meredith, and because I was the closest to her, questions about her habits and her relationships. She didn't mention Sophie trying to give her a hug, but noted that she was meeting Meredith's friends for the first time. I met 2 of Meredith's English friends, 2 girls she goes out with, including the last one that saw her alive that night she was murdered. For Amanda, who suffered from stomach spasm, the Questera affair was disastrous. I sat in this waiting room without having a chance to leave or eat anything besides vending machine food, which gave me a hell of a stomach ache until around 5:30 in the morning. Meanwhile, the police were endlessly watching her. In fact, Homicide Chief Monica Napoleoni would never get over the fact that Amanda hadn't cried while at the Questera. None of the men cried either, not even Giacomo, Meredith's boyfriend. Some of the English girls also stayed dry-eyed. Amanda and Raffaele would make faces, kiss each other while there was a body of a friend in those conditions, Napoleoni recalled. She said the lovers were indifferent to everything. even though they had been the ones to sound the alarm. Philomena later told investigators she saw Amanda pass a note to Raffaele at one point. Amanda also was seen scribbling in the infamous green notebook. And so I'm at the station right now after a long day spent telling how I was the first person to arrive at the house and to find my flatmate dead. The strange thing is that all I want to do now is write a song about this. It would be the first song that I've written, that it would be about someone who died in a horrible way for no reason. How morbid is that? I'm starving, and I'd really like to say that I could kill for a pizza, but it doesn't seem right. Laura and Philomena are pretty shocked. Raphael too. I'm angry. At the start, I was scared, and then sad, and then confused, and then really fucked off, and now I don't know. I can't concentrate. I didn't see her body, and I didn't see her blood, and so it almost seems like it didn't happen. But it happened. In the room right next to mine. Jesus. Ugh, poor Meredith. The blood was in the bathroom. I used to have a shower today. The front door was open because of the wind, and now I haven't got a house, and I am without a person that was part of my life, and I don't know what to think or do. DJ Jornshaw said that Amanda always dealt with her emotions by jolting them down. Composing a song at such a moment might seem strange to many, but Amanda would see it as a sign of respect. Music is everything to her. She would think about writing a song that would be a great way to honor somebody. The fact that Amanda wrote, "I could kill for her pizza," a common expression meaning merely, "I'm hungry for a pizza," would cause her great harm in Italy, where the phrase was taken literally. If she would kill for a pizza, then what else would she kill for? Startled pundits would actually debate on national TV. Police sent Raffaele and Amanda home at 5:30 a.m., telling them to report back at 11 a.m. when the Pinciancini, the lovebirds, finally reached Raffaele's flat on Corso Garibaldi. Amanda said she ate something substantial and passed out. Yeah, that was my biggest worry. Hey, you guys, Amanda found food. Oh my gosh. Alessandra Capani, a reporter from the Corriere della Sera, reached Philomena at 9 that first night, coaxing her only interview out of her. Identified as Philomena R. in the article, she told him that she'd already spoken to the police for 5 hours, and in fact, she had only ultimately been there another 8 hours until her release at 5 a.m. Let's go. Philomena R. answered the phone, speaking with a weak voice and above all weeping, wrote Capone. She doesn't want to talk. She confides in an acquaintance in Perugia who calls her to ask about Meredith. She was a girl who came to Italy to study, and that was what she was doing. Studying, learning, no enemies, no suspects. Mez was a 21-year-old student who was becoming nothing now. Philomena continued, crying and asking questions that have no answers. How is it possible to live happily like this? When you're not even secure at home, how is it possible? Asking questions and not expecting answers. In what countries do such things happen? Ugh. In the same story, Capone spoke to several of Meredith's Italian friends, saying that they were sitting around praying and blaspheming evidence at the Questera. I knew Meredith, yes, said Pietro, Merlin's bartender, who had offended Robin by loudly talking about the girl's death. I was at a party with her not long before. She was frequently with her friends, strolling around at home and in unusual places. Merlin's Latana places where there were hundreds of people every evening. The friends described Mez as very pretty, sunny, and strong. Sociable, determined, and steady, never showy, very nice, and of Indian background, an amber complexion. She liked to dance and go out, and live like a 21-year-old something, evenings slightly drunk, perhaps, but in her past, there was nothing to hide. Pietro noted, adding that Meredith, for example, did not even smoke cigarettes. She loved Italy, stressed the Corriere reporter. Everyone that knew her says the same things. Who knows what great things she might have achieved? Ugh. Across the English Channel, Meredith's loved ones were trying to reach her, leaving frantic messages that the police would discover on her British phone. Please call us. Don't make us worry. Please call. At 5 p.m. London time, a long night of horror had begun for John Kercher, a tall, silver-haired man who wore dark blazers with light-colored turtlenecks and puffed on filtered cigarettes in times of stress. His ex-wife Arlene Kercher had called him from her hospital bed to tell him that TV newscasters were reporting that a British student had been murdered in Perugia, a girl that they didn't have a name or photo of yet. Amazingly, Italian police never did tell the Kerchers that their daughter was dead. What the fuck, people? Oh. Her parents had to call around to find out for sure. John tried to reach Meredith's cell phone at least 12 times that night, but he kept getting her recorded message, and around 5:30 he finally heard her phone ring, but nobody answered. Then he decided to use his reporting skills, calling a news reporter desk all around London, working his media contacts. After about 2 hours, he last reached someone who knew of the student's name. But the reporter hesitated, not wanting to be the one to break the awful news. Yes, the name going around is Meredith. John Kercher dropped the phone. He couldn't believe it. He clung to one last hope. What if there was another Meredith studying in Perugia? He made his way to the family home in Coldon, where Meredith's siblings, Stephanie, John Jr., and Lyle, were already contemplating the baffling, horrific loss. Only Arlene, still in the hospital, wasn't there. But by the time she had spoken to the Foreign Office and knew that the Italian authorities had identified Meredith's name and cell phone number. At 9 a.m., the family was gathered around the TV. Meredith's photo popped up on the screen. Nobody spoke. They all hugged each other. Meredith is so beautiful and so witty, he told the Sun that night. We love her so much. I'm just stunned. We're devastated. I'm in total shock. I can't get upset. I can't cry. I can't get angry. The most gut-wrenching task lay ahead of them. Somebody had identified the body, so Arlene, Stephanie, and John made plans to fly to Perugia on November 6, 2007. I can't bear to think about it, he said. Because of John Kercher's devotion to his daughter, police were able to use his last call to make a rough estimate of when the murder had occurred. They knew Meredith and Sophie had parted ways before 9 p.m. Meredith had walked home alone and gone into the cottage. That was clear. Then shortly afterwards, Meredith's call to her mother had been cut off. At 10 p.m., someone used her British phone to try to call her bank. Nobody answered at 10:30. The 10:30 recording from that bank sent to the same phone. Police traced both calls back to the area near the cottage, but something strange happened when they studied John Kercher's call, which had occurred just after midnight. The phone seemed to ping in a new location. Frank Sforza knew every slip, dip, and rise in the hilltop town. When he heard about the last sad call, he suddenly saw the path that the killer or killers must have taken with the cell phones. The stairs up Via de Pegola provided the fastest escape route back into Old Town, but the route ran right past the 2 public basketball courts, so the killer would probably head uphill through the back roads and reached a small door in the wall. It opened directly into the Corso Garibaldi neighborhood, only steps away from Rudy's flat, but not far from Raffaelle's. But Frank Sforza discovered the door had been locked on November 1st, as it was most nights. So in order to avoid detection, the attacker would need to aim for an open gate higher on the hill. As he wrote on Perugia Shock, we can imagine the murderer wandered through the town with the adrenaline in the circle, with the blood on his clothes, and with cold sweat. Wandering in the town, wandering out of the town, out of the world, through the Via del Pergola, Via del Bellagio, Via Andrea di Perugia v Speriando. Roads, not streets, where nobody walks, where only a fugitive runs in the night with death in his heart, afraid to be recognized by someone passing with a car. The murderer is thinking what to do with those cell phones. His mind is in confusion, his hands are shaking, and the panic makes him unable to even realize how to turn off cell phones. Then, maybe before entering back into town, into Corso Garibaldi, he gets rid of them by throwing them into what looks like wild nature, but which is instead a well-groomed garden belonging to Elisa Lana. I'll be right back.